Well, things are heating back up and my office is on fire, but let's talk about what happened this week in One Stop and what's going on with files. I'm Sam Hayes. When they changed the listing agreement recently, when they did the updates in June, it removed the seller's contact information. Buyer's contact information is not on the contract. There's two ways that it'll help expedite getting the information to me to then help get to the lender, title, escrow, all of us, because we need to be in contact with the clients. You can either CC me on the DocuSign when you start sending the listing agreement or any offers you write, because if you CC me, I then have access to the original envelope, which has a history, shows everybody's email address that's on it. Smooths things out, makes it easier. I get the docs right away. Just please make sure you're including a property address in the subject line. It really helps me for processing. The other thing you can do is in either Glide or Zip Forms, there is a contact sheet that you can use to fill out, and we can provide that as well. Either one, but something, because unfortunately, I don't think it's clicked over that we just don't have access to your clients, and those delays delay me, it delays escrow trying to get wiring instructions or ordering HOA docs or anything along those lines. Remember, when a seller remains in the property, either the SIP or the RLAS, they need to carry renter's insurance. Their previous homeowner's insurance will not cover them any longer, and it is actually disclosed in both forms. Plus, that document, proof that they have that insurance, is to be provided to the other side before closing and transferring into a rent-back situation. It doesn't seem like a big deal. I actually had a dual agency one time where there was a rent-back and the pipes burst the day of. So we had to figure out who was responsible for when, where, why. Luckily, both already had insurance in place. We could show the time of recording when time frames went over. It was fine. Time frames went over, meaning coverage. It can be a huge problem. And it's something that we need to make sure we're paying attention to. Remember, you are not party to the contract. You are not part of the contract. You are an agent in the contract helping to coordinate it. So anything that has to do with your commission or credits or TC fees is not to be part of the contract. You either can do it on your listing agreement, because that's your contract with your seller, and we can do a modification of terms to clarify that, or you can do a buyer representation agreement. That's your other document that's just between you and your buyer and sets up the terms of your contract and working together. But they are not to be part of the RPA. It could be a potential RESPA. There's been a debate about that for years. I don't want to find out and be the poster child, so don't put them in the RPA. Your listing agreement, if marked on the TDS, or excuse me, not your listing agreement, your agent's visual, if marked on the TDS page 3, if it's not there, TDS isn't complete. It's per the RPA 11A2. So you need to do your agent's visual as soon as possible. It is literally one of the two civil code required actions, and the AVID itself is not required unless you put it in the TDS or required by your broker. But it is the only way to prove you did your civil code required duty. So it covers your butt. So that's why I know they're not your favorite things, but we need to get them done as soon as possible, especially on the listing side. And with listings taking a little bit longer right now, it really shouldn't be as big of an issue. You do have some time. I would get them done during your open houses. I know. Go early, stay late, take notes throughout the day. It'll make your life easier. I'm begging you, please. Have a plan with your lender, the lender that you're working with, before writing the contract. Make sure the buyer understands all the paperwork needed. I've lost 2 files in the past week because the buyers had no idea of what documentation was required. They weren't getting it in a timely manner, and the files got canceled on the other side for non-performance by the buyers. It is a big deal. So you need to make sure your buyers are educated and everybody's up to date about what they need to be doing. Just because it's contractually due does not mean it's actually due, because if we have not performed or performance hasn't happened, there are different time frames in the contract for that. So before we just go, well, it's due today, let's stop and take a look at the ebb and flow of the documents. Did the HOAs arrive? Did we get disclosures? Were they complete? Was that AVID included? There's a lot of little bits and pieces. The contract, yes, we need to adhere to time frames, but we also need to have fiduciary duty to the clients and make sure we're protecting them so that everybody stays on track. Let's see, just because if there's an insurance claim on the file, the new insurance company most likely will require or request proof it was repaired. I've been doing this for years. This is why I keep asking more and more questions, because there's a domino effect that, okay, we've had a red flag, we've had an insurance claim, it was water, we've got to get insurance on this property for this new buyer. How do we have proof it won't happen again? Because the insurance company doesn't want to pay. That's not their goal. So if we can show the paperwork and the documentation of repairs, it's really important. That's why I asked for it. Ask for it during the listings and ask for it when we're reviewing disclosures. For your preliminary title reports, I will look for vesting. However, reviewing it really is part of your job. If you see easements, we can request a color-coded plotted map to assist with clarifying what's on the property. Your expert in that is your title officer, and they're there to help you and clarify these things. I'm not an expert. You're not an expert. We can read them through and get familiar, but if there are questions, that's why we need to redirect the clients to them. Sometimes we don't hear from the other TC on the other side. That just happens. Most likely, I know sometimes I'm not going to call. I'm not going to respond. If I know you're working on something, you do not need another cook in the kitchen. And I'm going to stay out of it till you get sorted, especially if I know there's some negotiations going on. Being told, they may have been told not to respond. I've had agents say, hey, don't say anything. We need to stay right now. I'm communicating only. No problem. They may not have answers. That just sometimes happens. So when you don't see other TCs responding, remember they are working for that agent, working with that agent. They may be under that direction. I know I've been that way for you guys sometimes too. Let's see. If a tool saves you time, then it saves you money. So I always think, what will get me one more file? Then figure out how many files it takes to pay for it. That's how I do my math. So if there's a tool you need, I know it feels like it's time to retract, but actually this is when you should be investing in your business and getting yourself set up for success. With the rates dropping just a little bit, it's enough to get things moving again. So let's make sure we have systems in place and keep everything moving forward. Longer listing times means we'll need to update disclosures. We don't have to redo them. Once a set of disclosures is done, we don't want to redo them because if they redo them, they might forget something. So what we can do, though, is do an addendum once we get closer to escrow, or just let the sellers know that throughout the transaction, if things are going on, that they need to update us. It is very warm in my office today. Oh, my goodness. Agents, again, circling back, are not party to the contract. And if you tell me you've talked to the other agent, I'm going to have you put in an email to your clients. But really, we need to circle that back that it came from that seller. So if the agent says, seller says, and you go, I talked to the agent, I told the buyers, we're now in a chain of phone calls or information. I don't have proof that directly information came from that source and got to the other source. So what if between you, the other agent, the seller tells the other agent, the other agent tells you, and then to the buyer, something gets missed? That's on you. So we've got to get the stuff in writing. We've got to circle back and we've got to say, seller, put it in writing. We'll have the buyer sign it. Stay out of it. Dude, just because you talk to the other agent, you're not part of the contract. You could be taking on a lot of liability that you don't want to be. Remember, duress. So duress is, quote from Webster, threats, violence, constraints, and other actions brought to bear on someone to do something against their will or better judgment. When we set ridiculously short time frames, when you are like, we have to do this right now, everybody's freaking out, there's a potential for duress. And now that the market's shifting and people are having doubts and questions, that's also opening up red flags and potentials for reasons to not start lawsuits per se, but problems and disgruntle and non-connection. Take a breath. I appreciate that we need to keep things moving, but we also need to make sure that everybody has educated themselves and reviewed all their documents first. And I'm happy to make you mad at me, to delay you for 30 minutes, an hour, and say, make sure your clients saw this and send back an email saying they saw it, because I'm trying to protect you because I don't want you to deal with this file for the next 90 days. Oh, my goodness. Okay. If you're doing any changes to your commission, credits, reductions, referrals, that has to be documented in the file. That also needs to be, it's not an addendum to the contract. Circling back, you're not party to the contract. So what we would need is a CBC, modification of terms, if you're listing, or an escrow amendment. This is your money. I don't know what you've negotiated. I don't know where you've decided in a conversation to throw $500 here, $500 there. I need you to tell me. I need you to give me very direct, so it's in writing, so I know how I can get it handled. I don't want to spend your money arbitrarily. I don't want to give away credits, and I'm not going to give away your money unless you tell me to. So I need to hear that from the agents. If your client is going to be double apping, please let me and escrow know as soon as possible, because it can lead to confusion. We don't know who to send paperwork to. We want to make sure everything's to everybody so we can keep everything going in a timely manner. You're under a time constraint when you're doing a double app, so we definitely need to get that done as soon as possible. Just please put the property address on everything. It's really important. It really affects my ability to respond. It affects my ability to process. It affects everything. I don't know who to go chasing after, Xerox, blah, 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 or, sign this. I don't know. So I know for me, escrow, and everybody else, if you could really include that, it's one of the few things that's pretty much a constant in real estate. Let me know what I can do to help you in this hot, hot summer of craziness. And also, I hope things are picking back up for you. If you have any questions, please call me any chance or please call me anytime. You can reach me at 619-993-7264. I'm Sam Hayes. I'm Why with One Stop. Always verify everything with the broker of record of the file you're working on. I'm here to help. Thanks for having me on the team. Bye.